You're going to get through this.
Easy for listening. I was able to do it.
Easy for dancing.
I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Not me. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Shadowboxing Have Your Say. Today our guest in WTV studios is Lynn MacLaren from the Greens WA.
Great to be here, Tibor.
Thank you very much. So we would like to hear about the visions on of the Greens for 2016 election and the 2017 March election. So let's start. How many members you got in the Greens in WA? As members of party?
Oh, members of the party?
Yeah.
Well, the membership has grown steadily since about 2012. In fact, since I've been in the party in 1998, it's grown steadily.
Yes.
Well,
it's an election year
we have
now.
A healthy number.
It's an election year now.
Yeah, we have a very healthy number of members, and we're anticipating to have even more members closer to the elections.
So we're talking about thousands, or we're talking about hundreds?
Oh, we're over 1,000.
Over 1,000. Yeah. That sounds not too bad anyway.
Well,
so,
it's a great.
I'm asking because whoever would like to join, this is the opportunity to join.
Absolutely.
For the Greens, if they like the policies, if they like the future, and they care about the world.
And we are divided into federal electorates. So if you want to join a regional group, they are. You know, there's one near you. There's a regional group near you if you want to get involved.
Yes.
You can get involved at a local government level. We had a good, strong capacity building campaign for local government.
Yes.
And as you know, we had a really strong by-election campaign for the Senate. And we will be having next year, or in the next coming months, a growing campaign for the state parliament. So, you know, we do attract people during elections, and this is that time if you want to get involved. This is a good time to do it.
Yeah, I thought so. But why I'm asking about the membership, not because I just want to be picky and want to find out, you know, how many people, but because I've never been a member of the Greens, but I've been told how the mechanism works with the members of the party, which is mean all decision is made by the members. Is that still true?
Absolutely, and we have a grassroots decision-making process. It's, you know, we are now into our, you know, I think we had our 30th anniversary the other day.
Yes.
So our processes are tried and tested, and they've been developed over that time. So we have good capacity for developing consensus decision making, and we work at a grassroots level. As you know,
yes.
We function also as a state party that's connected with other state parties under the Australian Greens. So the Greens WA in 2001 joined the Australian Greens, so that we function in that same way, grassroots level, all the way through state and federal politics.
So how many states has got the Greens, or every state has got
every
territories got the Greens?
Every state and territory, and they're all,
yeah.
As far as I know, they're all growing.
Which one is most important for the Greens, the federal election or the state election for the Greens WA?
I think they're both really important. We have 2 senators in the federal parliament,
yes.
And we really want to see a push to re-elect Senator Rachel Seward in the federal campaign, which will be about September.
Yes.
We have a
the campaign
growing
is not
influence.
The election is
the elections in September.
Not the campaign. I heard the campaign already started.
Well, you know, it's funny. In the federal in the federal arena, you don't really know when the election's going to be. People feel it. You know, it's when they feel, when their values are triggered, when they feel there's something unfair happening, either at a federal or state level, they just want to act. That's what drives people to get more active and more involved. So the more people you upset through your political decisions, the more people are going to get active in politics. And I think Australian culture has been one that, you know, it's a she'll be right culture, and we've trusted, you know, for generations, we've trusted politicians to just, you know, kind of. It's very much changing, very much changing. And I think it's a good thing that people are awake and people recognize that the faith that they have put in politicians is perhaps not always well-deserved.
It's not well-deserved always. We know that, guys, from our point of view anyway, because we're paying the wages. But Never mind. So on the trust issue and on the big issues or the iconic issues, GMO.
Yes.
Seems to me that policy at the Greens, which traditionally the only one policy in Australia which was really against GMO, at least in WA and elsewhere, is changing now. Some new things coming in. GMO is not that bad as was last year. What's happening?
I don't think that's true. I think there was.
I know it's not true because probably GMO doesn't change. It's
Well,
as
it's
bad
not
as
true
was
that
before.
our position is unchanged. Our position is unchanged. We are opposed to GMs. And
According
that,
to
there has been,
your leader, your national leader, Richard Dinatale, who is a doctor, according to him, GM is not a problem from
Well,
scientific point of view or from his experience. So you got a leader of the nation of the Greens, and he's talking so differently from what we used to, and some of your voters, and not just the members of the party, voted to you because they trusted it's not going to change.
Well,
And it's on the change, on the verge.
It hasn't changed.
No.
What you're reading
Yes.
is a misreading of
it?
Richard Dinatale's position, and
I
he
read
has
word by
actually
word.
gone
I
to.
heard him.
He's gone to great lengths to
Yes.
explain that. Now, our position for GM has not moved at all.
So what
And
is he talking about then?
Ask
if
him,
I misread-
ask him directly, and he'll
No, but
explain it directly.
I just
but the
can
problem is
explain
the
and see
twist,
what he
and
says.
this is a good example
Yeah.
of how the media sometimes gets it completely wrong. The media has whipped up a comment from our leader late last year, like maybe 6 months ago or
Yeah.
something, has whipped it into this contemporary issue and has cast doubt on a policy which has not changed. We reconsidered it.
What
at
I
the
read is not
last
from the
federal,
media.
We reconsidered it
Yeah.
at the last federal conference and committed again to opposing GM. We have, as you know, a long-standing opposition
I know
to
that.
GM crops. And in Western Australia, there are only 2 crops which are GM, cotton and canola, and they have beat the gate. They have come through the gate because of the Liberal and national governments which
I
have
know.
permitted that. But the Greens have been consistent opposition, and now I think you'll find that the ALP is now opposed to GM crops. So we've
heard
got
that from the
strong
ALP, yes.
opposition. We've got strong opposition to GM that has not changed. What Richard made a comment about medicines. Now, the testing of medicines and the biotechnology that goes into medicines is completely different from the biotechnology and the testing in agriculture. And we have seen
For sure,
GM
because
exactly.
because some of them not even tested in proper.
Exactly. We know they rely on the biotech industry's numbers.
Yeah.
They don't independently test. A whole bunch of people have relied on someone at one point looking at data, which happens to be someone who works for Monsanto. So I think what we have seen here is misreading of what we're talking about GM and what the general public know as GM. Now, the medicines that are created are absolutely essential to have complete faith in the medicines that have been created through the
But
biotech industry.
That's correct. And GM, and it's not
and
the
they are
GMO
tested
as
and
we
tested.
know. It's not the GMO
Yeah, it's
as
not
we
what you would
know.
think. So here that's how it's been misconstrued. Most people would say, oh, I understand that, but the fact is that the Australian and certain reporters have enjoyed whipping that up. I think there was an essay in the monthly this month.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean they're going to whip it up. They're going to try and drag us down. You know why? Because
No,
we're doing
I don't
well.
know.
Because we're doing well, and because Richard is one of the most I think effective performers that we've had in a long time. Christine, I think she was great, but
Yeah.
she didn't cut through in some groups of
In the
people.
points, yes.
Bob was
Beat her
amazing.
points, yes.
Bob has a lot of support throughout the country, even now. And now this is our another leader up there. Since we established leaders in the Greens, this is
represent
another
well.
leader who does a great job across a wide group of people.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do well in the federal election with Richard at the helm.
So tell me then about the GMO as a last thing. If the Greens are still that much of committed to not have GMO foods, What's happening with the labeling? Because that's still not won, even that little bit of the fight not won.
With
With the labeling of the food with GMO.
that is true. Labeling of GM food is important because consumers need to know what they're eating, and we have backed
Probably
that
we got
principle
the
from
right
day
for
one.
it because we're paying for the food.
It's possible to do it. Yeah, exactly. We're going to eat it. We want to know what we're eating. Fair enough. And the Greens remain pushing for labeling laws at a national level. That's where
So
we
what
would
is
have the
keeps
most
this
impact.
thing not getting into the
Well, you've got
because that
who's
that,
in
that-
power? Who's in power, Tibor?
But you know,
It's like-
you got the shark issue, which you said was an emotional and was something as a topic us. But
Yeah.
how the people who supported the shark culling, okay, also maybe support this one, and they're not on the streets. People not, you know, banging the tables for the labeling and the food and things. Are
Yeah.
we sleeping or what's happening? So, that's my question
Yeah.
probably, or that's try to be my question about the GMO. If the commitment is there, if it's
Yes.
clear, why don't we get results?
Well, we need to have more influence in Parliament. In the U.S., they have also been trying for labeling laws, and it went to the highest level in Congress and was undermined by industry at the very
Completely.
last, the 11th hour. So it isn't an easy thing to achieve, but we're still working on achieving it. And the more people we have elected to Parliament, the stronger our ability to bring in that change.
We hope that. Lynn, on that note, we have to go for a short break, but stay with us because after the break we're coming up with a little bit more of the Greens policy for the next upcoming elections. So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to Shadowboxing. Have your say. Today my guest is Lynn MacLaren from the Greens WA in the studio. Lynn, in the first half we got few interesting questions about the Greens and the policies and the upcoming two elections, the federal and the state election. You know, human rights are violated according to some in
Yeah.
the society. What the Greens policy on that composite vaccination, especially because you got a doctor, Richard Dinatel,
Yeah.
and he should have something to say about that.
Look, I think that's been a very controversial topic throughout Australia about compulsory vaccination. I think generally that the public understands the reason why vaccination has been, supported and encouraged. I certainly would like to see greater education, more encouragement for vaccination, and retaining the right of a parent or a child who might be at risk to choose not to be vaccinated. And that, in fact, is the policy, that you can still not be vaccinated if you have a doctor who says you shouldn't be vaccinated. So that remains. What has changed is linking it to the benefit, and I don't think that's right.
So this composite vaccination brings lots of questions and it's very controversial. But really, one thing is morally not right in the government actions in Australia, seems to me, and for lots of people, to using the children in the social system as a sort of blackmail to force parents to consider otherwise and remake their decision. So how does it fit into the human rights and the rights of the kids?
I think what happened in Australia is we haven't made a decision to invest enough resources and energy and effort into public health. And that is that's why they're cutting off welfare as a punitive measure to try to really promote what should be a positive public health message, which is that the public benefits when children are vaccinated. Now, we have a right to question those vaccinations. We have a right to have a doctor that, is a trustworthy doctor giving us the right vaccinations. But as a public health message, that's a different story to a punitive, we're going to take away your welfare payments if you don't do this, or we're going to make your kid, somehow punished. So I think it's the punishment approach that has been adopted by these, conservative governments, which is what we are opposed to. You're right. If a family is qualified to receive welfare, if they are struggling and they need some assistance, it's in our public interest for them to get that financial assistance. It is not appropriate to, in my view, cut off their payments. Now, the vaccinations is another issue. And as I've said, if you, as a parent, go to your doctor with your child and your doctor gives you an exemption from that program, then you should be exempted from that program.
And the kids should not be punished because of this is against all human international law and agreement. What
Kids are
Australia
punished
signed.
if you as a child attract a disease that could have been prevented through vaccination, you are punished in the most severe way. So whether you are punished through contracting a disease, which we could stop through a vaccination program, or whether you're punished by your parents not having enough food on the table for you, you're still a child that's at risk. And so that is not the answer.
It is double punishment.
The answer is
But
that
when
we
the
need
government
a
has
better
no the
public
right,
health system.
But what is happening when the government has no the moral or the right, as a legal right, to take away such benefits from kids, not from the parents, from the kids?
Well,
why the people,
Yeah.
who are worrying about the sharks gonna be caught by the government and killed, they're not worrying about these kids who not receiving the payments. And no one is on the street, no one is jumping up and down about that. Why? Why people couldn't see common sense? Or the Greens couldn't go ahead and say, yes, vaccination is something which we should discuss, and we can. But punishing and taking away the kids' entitlement, a social benefit, that's a no-no in the world. And this is the only country on the world who are employing this. And no one is on the streets. The media is not, raving about that.
Yeah,
The parliamentarians
I know.
not
There's a
jumping
lot
up
of
and down.
issues in Australia, and I think it's in part because we don't have enough programs like yours. We don't have enough independent media. We don't have enough scrutiny. We don't have enough people who are adequately informed about the contemporary issues, and part of that's because we don't have a strong media presence here in Australia.
We've got Kerry Stokes, and
in
we've got
WA,
lots of media people.
WA, we have one state paper still, one state daily paper. That's
in one
it.
hand.
In one hand. So, I mean, it's no wonder why, people aren't upset about things, because they just aren't aware. And once the message does come through, I think people people are concerned. And I think it's wrong for you to say that people who didn't care about sharks don't care about
Kids' benefits and
yeah.
welfare.
I think that the people who
Maybe
stood
care.
up against a policy which wasn't based in good, sound science,
No.
and that was going to, murder or was going to kill, animals for no reason, are the same people who will stand up against any policy which affects them negatively, which affects their family negatively, because they're prepared to stand up for
but
values.
Unjust. Negative effect is one thing.
I think you're right.
But
I think it
being
is a
unjust
justice
is.
issue. I think it is a justice issue, and I think people do stand up against injustice.
I hope they will.
Look, have you seen what's going on with that King Jarrah tree that was felled?
Yes, that's another question for me.
Yeah.
So, killing the trees,
Yeah.
not just the sharks, killing the trees. That's motivated the people on the Roe Highway issue.
Well, yeah, even beyond that.
And beyond that, so that's motivated and mobilized the people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is why? Because it's got more social media coverage, or why is that? So killing the Jarrah tree, which is 500, 600 days old, and it's protected by the law, but if the tree got bees, the law protection is not exist.
Yeah, look,
How does that work? Tell me.
the law
And one more
protection
important,
does exist,
Yes.
except for you've got, I think in this case, you've got a government department that failed in its duty, right? And it's clear to everybody. You do not kill a 400. Actually, they're saying it's between 5 and 1,000 years
Yes,
old.
yes, so
500
it's more
and
than 500
1,000
years
years
old, yes.
old tree to get rid of bees. Now, most people can see that logic. It's the same thing with the sharks. You can see the logic that this is crazy. You know, this is absurd that the environment is not protected and not valued by the systems that are in place, and that's why people are upset about it. You know, we had a great response from the Aboriginal and Noongar elders in the area who were, you know, outraged. We have mothers and families, you know, in that area who are outraged. You've got arborists around and botanists and people who understand ecosystems outraged. You've got people who, of course, were opposed to the road who are outraged because
Yes.
it looks like the government is, you know, by stealth trying to achieve its aims when the Supreme Court has said they shouldn't build that road. They have no right to build that road because they don't have an environmental assessment
Thanks
that's
God
valid.
we know that now.
So you've
So who
got
is
this
responsible
range
to
of
kill the
people.
tree?
Well, we're still getting to the bottom of that. And, you know, it's the minister hasn't made a comment. You know, I'd like to see the environment
comment.
minister. I'd like to see the environment minister explain why that happened and why there hasn't been a fine or some kind of comeuppance on whoever made that decision. You know, we have a right to protect our native. We actually have laws in place protecting such important environmental assets.
Take the tax reform first, because part of the tax reform is the GST, which is going around and around in the circles now years and years, and WA has certainly got some problems with that. So what's the opinion on the Greens, and why the Greens, you know, closer to the Liberals or the coalition than to the Labour anymore on the tax reform?
I think from my experience, and I can't speak specifically about the reasons why our federal colleagues in the Parliament supported that. I know that they can speak much more fluidly about that. But just on a general comment, if you can get a good outcome, then why not? And I think we've seen in some cases whoever the party's in government, whether it's Liberal or Labour, will say this is red, and the opposition will say no, it's black, regardless of the quality of the argument or the impact on us as the taxpayer, right? So
you think
we need to
politicians
actually not just put up a hand and say, no, that's not perfect, I'm not going to accept it. In every case, there are some cases where you might say, no, it's unacceptable on any level. But I think that the Greens on those two issues have worked constructively for positive outcomes on those, whatever was available to them. As far as I can understand, what Labour has said is that they wanted some other outcome which wasn't even on the table. And that's a time when you fight in Parliament. There's a time when you fight in Parliament, and there's a time when you fight in the electorate. And to take a battle to the electorate during an election campaign is when you fight for those overall arching policies that aren't on the table by the current government. The current government said, we will reform tax in this way, and I think the Greens said, okay, well, this piece of it's good for us. And I don't think it was an overarching thing where you're saying, oh, we take holus bolus every single policy that the coalition puts up, in the same way that we don't agree with every policy that Labour puts up, because we are a separate and independent party with our own policies.
But what the coalition says about not the tax cheats, but the big tax cheats, you know, the big international companies and multinationals, Greens can accept that. It can be, you know, some difference made with different companies. So the Greens not saying what the Labour say, let's make them pay the tax where they are earning the money from, so the country. And that's a little bit changed, and you guys, according to the information as not made up by the press, agreed to have, you know, some companies exceptions.
No, I think that's the wrong, from
the
what
wrong
I've read
reading?
about it, we achieved some tax reform.
Yes.
It wasn't everything that we wanted to achieve. And the ALP achieved no tax reform because they asked for something that wasn't on the table. And in simple terms, that's how I understand it. You cannot negotiate if there's no one, you know, interested in whatever you're talking about. So,
That's very true.
so that's the problem. And I know, you know, the Greens are 11 people in the federal parliament,
Yes.
and in the state parliament we're 2. You know, we are 2% of the Brains Trust in upper and lower
Yeah.
house. 2%, under 2%. You know, and we still negotiate and do our damnedest to do a good job for the people that elected us. And in the same way, my federal colleagues do that. You know, we've got, in the state, we've got over 10% of the people who support us, and we have 2% of the voices in state parliament. So we've got a lot more people out there who agree with our policies and want to see us
Yeah.
achieve and do well. And those are the people that I'm working for right now. And in the federal parliament, those are the people my federal colleagues are working for as well. We're not working to try to appease any Liberal or Labor Party policy heads. We are working for the people who voted us in there, and we want to achieve outcomes on the policies that, you know, we put forward. We want fair taxation. We want to see...
That's a big ask.
Yes, we want
in
to
this
see...
country.
We want to see fair pensions too, you know. It can't be, you know, one or the other. You have to have the both. We want to see, you know, better education. We want to see more funding in public education. We want to see less funding into the wealthiest private schools that are spending it on, you know, these U-Butte, you know, resource facilities. You know, there are lots of changes that we would make if we were putting up the bills and in charge. And so
But
that's
that's
not the
not
position we're
the
in
case.
now.
No.
The position we're in is commenting on what the government puts forward. So if the government puts forward a tax bill and says, this is it, take it or leave it, and there's a piece in there that we can negotiate better outcomes, we're going to use that opportunity.
We will see the upcoming 2 election. How do you using the opportunity in here in WA or the Greens in federal? Thank you, Lynn, to being
Thanks a lot.
here.
Thanks.
And next time, don't forget, same time next week, same channel. Shadowboxing. Have your say.